Hey guys, so every Friday in the Alcohol Freedom Program, I do a deep dive of some kind. And so this week I wanted to share this video with everyone here on YouTube. Hey guys, so I was just chatting with a Sinclair Method doctor who was having issues with some of his patients who were struggling with being compliant, totally compliant on the Sinclair Method. And this has kind of been on my mind a lot lately just because I've ran into some people who are also having the same challenges. And he asked me, how is it that you stayed compliant through your own journey? Like, what made you be totally committed to it? And I was thinking about it, and what I realized, is that on the most basic level is that the things that kept me committed and compliant on the Sinclair Method, because believe me, there were temptations to not comply. If I was just stuck without Naltrexone and someone's offering me a drink and I didn't want them to know I was doing the protocol, I had to find ways to say no. And there were a few times I almost drank without the medication. Coping with anger and other difficult emotions that come up that were driving me to drink. There was temptation to not comply. And so why is it that I was able to be compliant? And I think the two main motivational factors for me was that I was very realistic and honest with myself about the consequences of my drinking in my life. And in fact, I wrote out a list and I kept adding to it over and over again as thoughts would come up and, different things and different reasons would come up about, what the consequences are of my drinking. And that was anything from things like, and what I mean by this too is like, what would my life look like if I didn't get this under control? Like, what problems is alcohol causing in my life right now? And what's going to happen if I don't fix this problem? And so for me, right before I got on the Sinclair Method, I literally almost got a DUI. I should have gotten a DUI. The cop just let me go. I had been driving around while drinking and hitting curbs and stuff. And my husband had to come change my flat tire. And I was making excuses of why it happened. My liver was hurting. I was feeling really unhappy in the job that I had because I was feeling so insecure from my drinking that I was just kind of settling in this career path that I really didn't like. And there was a long, long list of all of these essentially negative consequences or just the costs of what my alcohol use disorder was costing me. And so that is something that I revisited on a daily basis. And I kept it in the forefront of my conscious awareness of, if I don't make this change, this is essentially what it's costing me. And is it worth the cost, essentially? Asking myself that. And every time I would check in with myself, it would be like, no, it's not worth the cost of all of these things that are, the negative consequences of my drinking in my life. So that was half of it. And I think the key part with that, and then what else I'm going to share is really making this something that's very real for you viscerally and something that you think about on a regular basis, on a daily basis consciously, and then you feel the emotion of it as well. And so with that list of the negative consequences of my drinking, I would sit with it and feel the reality of it and allow it to kind of sink into my conscience and feel like, man, is that really with this one life I'm given, is that really the way I want to live this life, again, just really feeling the emotion of all of these negative consequences. And so the other side of that was me getting really excited about my future and all of the things that I was going to be able to do when alcohol was no longer a problem for me. And I also would keep a list and add to it on a regular basis and revisit it daily so that it was always on my conscious awareness, these things that I was really excited about and that, were possible now that I wasn't hungover all the time, feeling really, in a mental fog, and I was just in general becoming empowered over my relationship with alcohol. And these were things that were really small, like even just waking up on a Saturday and not being hungover and being able to walk to a coffee shop and have a coffee and chat with a friend, something so simple that alcohol always took away from me because I was hungover almost every single Saturday morning and I would be in bed until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And so it would be this list of these tiny things up into these big things. I always wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I just never knew what about. And I also, was always in a mental fog and, not inspired or energized enough to actually create a video due to my alcohol and my drinking. And also there was just so many other things in my future that I was genuinely really excited about. And one of which is, this path that I've been on now, which I really feel like is my life purpose, is helping people with the Sinclair Method. And so that meaning and purpose that I was having in my life through helping people was also a huge motivator for me to stay committed to this process. And so those were the two kind of, I think, driving factors that were kind of pulling me toward the future that I really wanted for myself, and constantly revisiting that and getting really excited about that. Also feeling that, viscerally, and getting emotionally excited about, man, what's life going to be like in 6 months from now or a year from now when, I don't have this problem anymore. And then also the reality of, wow, what's life going to be like if I do keep drinking as I have been. And I think that those two things were really kind of like the balance, the ebb and the flow, which what kept me focused in the day in and day out. And in those moments where I was tempted to not comply or to fall back on self-destructive behaviors. And I still would abuse alcohol in the Sinclair Method. I wasn't by any means perfect, but I was always compliant. That was like the key. Sometimes I would overdrink. Sometimes I wouldn't be mindful. Sometimes I would drink hard alcohol when I knew I shouldn't be. But I was always compliant. Like, that's why it's called the golden rule. It's like the most important thing to do to have success on this method. And I think anybody watching this video knows that that's true. But those were the things that kind of kept me committed in those moments where I was being tempted, because I was constantly revisiting them and they were very real for me. The consequences and the benefits, the consequences of drinking were very real for me, and then the benefits of what my future could look like. And I also on this journey read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, which is a classic book. I think anybody should read the book. But that helped me understand the importance of having meaning in my life. And that looks different from everyone, because before TSM, alcohol was my purpose and my meaning. I was really living for that next drink. I was always looking forward to drinking, or I was resisting drinking, thinking about drinking. That was like my life purpose and what gave my life, quote unquote, meaning. And so as I was breaking up with alcohol in the way that I'd known it, I really had to find other ways to find meaning in life. In Viktor Frankl's book, he was someone who was a survivor of the concentration camps, and he attributes his survival through the camps and through the atrocity he went through simply by the meaning that he had in his life and the purpose that he had on his life. And that allowed him to push through in the hard times and ultimately be a survivor. And so that book, it's a great book, but it really illustrates that as humans, I believe that we're all here for a reason. We're all put here for a purpose, and we can uncover that purpose when we seek it out. But if we're not actively seeking it out and running after it, I don't care if you're 20, 30, 50, 70, like, you still have your purpose and you still have an opportunity to live it out. And I think what alcohol does is it keeps us stuck in this trap and cycle of just drinking and thinking about drinking and kind of living this life day by day in a way where we're not really thinking about that future self or the long-term consequences of our day-to-day actions. We're kind of just stuck in this cycle of, as I said, for me, I was just living for my next drink. I wasn't really focused on, things I wanted to do in 5 years, or even really thinking about the negative consequences. But as I looked back on my history with alcohol, as I got started on the Sinclair Method, it was like, wow, I could see all of the ways that it had been negatively impacting my life for so long. And so all this to say, I think that lack of compliance with the Sinclair Method is the biggest challenge that most people face. Some people have no problem with it. It's, easy and it's a non-negotiable for them. For me, it was a non-negotiable, but that doesn't mean I wasn't tempted. And I can understand why people choose not to comply, especially if we're not, getting really excited about that future that we want for ourselves, and we're not really real with ourselves on the consequences of our drinking. We could just kind of be stuck in this trap. And that's why I call it an alcohol trap, is because it kind of deceives us into thinking that, like, it's the only good thing in our life, or makes us believe that this is where I'm getting all my pleasure from. I can't imagine life without it. But that is the deception of over drinking. And so I just encourage you and invite you that if you're someone who has struggled with compliance, to perhaps do what I did, which is to, create these lists of all of the consequences, and be honest with yourself about all of the consequences that your current drinking patterns are costing you. Like, what are the costs of that? Health costs, financial costs, happiness, joy, lack of sleep. How is it impacting your family? All of these consequences, how is it preventing you from, living the life that you really want to do? I know for me, alcohol was this obstacle that was in the way of all these things I wanted to do, but I was just like stuck in its trap. And so getting real about all of the consequences of your drinking, and for me, making a list was really helpful, and revisiting that every single day so that it's fresh in your conscious awareness and you're honest with yourself about these consequences. And then on the flip side of that, all of the possibilities and the potential of your future if and when you get this problem under control? Like, what are those deep-seated desires and dreams and hopes that you had for yourself before alcohol use disorder was a thing, you know, that you really wanted for yourself, that you saw yourself having in your future? And, you know, a lot of my journey on this method was honestly thinking back to childhood dreams and wishes and desires, because that's when, of course, I didn't have problem drinking then, and that's when, you know, those wishes were most pure and sincere. And so that's where I started for me, because I was honestly in a place of like, I don't know what I like to do. I don't even have a passion. Like, what are my hobbies? I've told people the story that, you know, on my alcohol-free days, I'd go to the store and get paints, and I would just like start painting, and I'm a terrible painter. But that was like where I had to start with, like, I don't even know how to spend my time on alcohol-free days. And so that was where I started, and of course it progressed from there. And consistency is key with all of this. And forgive me, I'm just kind of bouncing around in this video. I want to keep it focused though. But to get back to the, you know, my kind of invitation for you is to really, again, think about the negative consequences of your drinking, write it down, revisit it every day, make it visceral, make it emotional, get real and honest with yourself about those consequences. And then the same for the future that you have to look forward to. Get real with yourself about how amazing would that be if you were waking up and didn't even think about drinking anymore. Like, what's your ideal day in the life when you have your ideal relationship with alcohol? And maybe it still involves having a drink, but maybe it's a glass of wine at a nice Italian dinner, but that's it. And, you know, you spend the day with friends or watching movies or exercising or doing your favorite hobby, whatever that may be. So getting excited about your future and revisiting that every single day and making it very real for yourself emotionally, like literally allow yourself to get really excited about it, and do this with consistency, do it every single day. And I think that will really help to create a drive and a motivation in you to stick to this no matter what, no matter the challenge or circumstance that comes up. So hope that was helpful, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Talk to you soon. If you are looking for more comprehensive support and guidance on the Sinclair Method so that you can reach extinction as quickly as possible and get busy living the life that's waiting for you on the other side, I invite you to check out the Alcohol Freedom Program.